And now for something completely different.
So the Painscreek Killings is one of the more remarkable mystery games I've ever played. Being that it was the first game from indie developers EQ Studios, it had a shaky 5-year production and then a complete flop of a launch in 2017. But since then, the Painscreek Killings has slowly trickled to have a pretty healthy following, owed mainly to word of mouth discussing its merits, and also the occasional Gab Smolder stream. As fond as I am of Painscreek, I don't think I'd call it a masterpiece the same way I called Scratch's one. The story is a solid B+, the graphics are serviceable, but none of those are the reason I've started making whatever you'd call this. What I find so damn interesting about the game is its unique and unprecedented approach to the mystery genre. Simply put, the Painscreek Killings seeks to emulate the experience of conducting a real, cold case murder investigation. It does this by suggesting you keep a notebook and then dumping you at the front gates of a depopulated town. Find out who killed the mayor's wife is the only direction the game gives you. After that, you are on your own. Though it has its shortcomings, I really enjoyed my time with Painscreek, and I find myself wanting to play more games like it, only there are no other games like it. Apart from Scene Investigators, a game released several years ago by the same people, it stands alone in a genre that I can only describe as detective simulator. What's so interesting to me about the design of this game isn't that it's a terribly original or genius idea, but that it's very brave. True to its aspiring realism, the game isn't just open world, but also non-linear. There's definitely an intended route that a player using a walkthrough would use to beat the game in an hour or less, but playing this game blind and patient, the way that EQ Studios intended, is supposed to yield an unforgettable experience spanning somewhere between 10 to 15 hours. So now what I want to know is, did it work? Were the developers able to make an open-world murder mystery without any of the hand-holding that other titles use, and still have players complete it? And in the same vein, were players actually fooled by the mystery, or did they figure out who the killer was too early? These questions, and many others which will pop up along the way, will be answered in this 3-part series, a complete dissection of both story and game design in the Painscreek Killings. As always, I prefer to begin these videos with a strong recommendation of the game I'm about to cover. Solving this mystery is something you can only do once. If you want to solve it for yourself, then don't let me take that away from you. Unlike Scratch's, which was completely abandonware and could not be purchased at all, the Painscreek Killings is available on Steam for the fair and equitable price of $20. An average playthrough will take around 15 hours, so that's a pretty good bang for your buck. Regardless, it tends to go on sale semi-regularly, and you can always pause my video at any point if you decide you'd like to go play it yourself. Next, onto context. Just why is Painscreek Killings the way that it is? EQ Studios was founded in 2012 by a group of 3D modelers who decided they had what it took to make their own IP, instead of just strapping along on freelance work. The founders, Ferry Tomi, Fumien Nagano, and Yuri Matsuba, all shared a love of the mystery genre, but felt that it had been poorly represented in video games for no discernible reason. To them, most mystery games focused on point-and-click pixel hunting, solving elaborate puzzles, and walking through interesting but linear stories. These were not the things that made them fall in love with the genre. When asked about the purpose of their game, creative director Ferry said the following: "More than anything, we wanted to create an immersive, investigative experience. We wanted players to feel like they were real detectives. We wanted them to feel smart about themselves when they connected the pieces together. We wanted them to experience the aha moments when the clues they had been poring over for so long clicked and started to make sense in their minds. And finally, we wanted to avoid providing any form of hand-holding in the game, allowing players to navigate challenging situations and solve the case independently. When players solved the case, all credit would be theirs. They earned it." Team EQ didn't want the Painscreek Killings to be an especially hardcore detective game. They wanted it to be immersive, but still accessible to anyone with the patience and interest to pick it up, non-gamers included. To top it off, Ferry believed that searching for hints online would actively damage the experience and break the immersion. According to him, in order to get the real Painscreek experience, you must solve it on your own. On to a more pressing question. Just how exactly are we going to determine if Painscreek succeeded in what it set out to do? How do I plan to gather my data? The truth of it is that it's not going to be an exact science, at least not with my budget, but we do have some very useful tools to help us find our answers. First, the makers of the Painscreek Killings actually published a book about them making the Painscreek Killings. It's called The Making of the Painscreek Killings. They published it on Steam as a 206-page PDF that's available as a $15 DLC. I copped it instantaneously and read it all in a week. It was exactly what I needed to understand the developer's intentions behind this game. Throughout these videos, you'll hear me quote excerpts from this book. In fact, you've heard me quote it once already. But when I'm not pulling quotes from the book, you will see me pulling quotes from the interview that I had with Mr. Ferry Tomy, the director of Painscreek Killings, and Yoshihatsu Chida, who is both the level designer and composer for much of the game's soundtrack. Both are very genuine, hardworking people who were a pleasure to talk with. Some of their insights will be especially helpful later. So now we are armed with the knowledge of what went into making this game, but we still need a way to tackle the game's reception post-launch. How are we going to measure things like if the mystery was too easy or too difficult? Likewise, how will we find out if players were able to complete the game on their own, or if they ended up turning to the internet for the hints that Team EQ refused to give them? Unfortunately, my own history with the game can only provide so much insight into the Painscreek experience, seeing as much of the game can be played non-linearly, and the order in which one plays this game will have a tremendous impact on how they approach the mystery. Suffice to say, understanding the possible routes a player could take in this investigation is not something I could do with just my own experiences. To do that, I would need volunteers. Guinea pigs. People who would be willing to not only sit down and play the game in its entirety, but would also allow for themselves to be recorded in full during the process, so that afterwards I could go back and study their choices and observations. But where would I find such a thing?
Why am I asking you?
And then it hit me. Graciously, I have been given permission by 3 other channels to use footage of their playthroughs for these videos. This means we have investigators, real people who are going to play the game blind while we hover over them and study their every move. So here's how I plan to break this whole thing down. The Painscreek Killings was written using the 3-act structure, the same way most books and virtually all movies are written. To begin, I will give you a brief overview of what must be done to complete Act 1, and then we will turn our investigators loose in Painscreek and observe what they do and don't uncover. As each of our detectives make it to the end of Act 1, I will pause their playthrough, and once they've all caught up to one another, we will pause the game altogether and take a good 15 minutes or so to discuss our findings. That's where we'll judge what did and didn't work. Then I rinse and repeat this same process for Acts 2 and 3, which will ultimately be episodes 2 and 3 of this miniseries, and we've got our complete data pool. 4 annotated playthroughs of the Painscreek Killings, and all the little things that make them special. Now all I need is a trifold board, and I've got a damn science fair project. I'm very excited for you to meet our investigators and begin the study, but first there's just a few more things we need to clear up, mainly about how we're going to interpret our data and evaluate the game. So, how do I figure out if Painscreek is a good mystery? First, what is a good mystery? A bad mystery could end with the reveal being too obvious and surmised early on, or alternatively the reveal being ridiculously unfair and impossible to predict. And a good mystery is similar in that it can end in one of 2 ways also. The reader uses the clues to solve it before the reveal, or they are positively shocked by the reveal and realize all the clues after. Seeking truth, I asked you guys a couple weeks ago through a poll if you preferred option A or B, and to my surprise, you seem to like them both close to equally. This just makes mystery data even harder to interpret, so the way I've inferred my results is like this. A diverse and healthy reading of the Painscreek Killings, or any mystery story, would read as follows. Half of the audience must solve the mystery before it becomes blatantly obvious, and the other half must not. If more than half solve it, the mystery can be considered easy. If less than half solve it, then we might consider it to be more difficult, or worse, unfair. Needless to say, a larger data pool will yield more precise results, but in our case, a perfect score for Painscreek Killings might look like having 2 out of our 4 detectives solve the mystery. So if that's how we plan to evaluate the mystery side of things, how are we going to evaluate the game part of it? That one's a bit simpler, but pretty harsh. EQ Studios have made it pretty clear that they want the Painscreek Killings to be completed without the use of any third-party hints or spoilers. This means that if any of our detectives need a hint or spoiler to complete the game, then EQ has failed at their goal. That may sound harsh, but don't forget, Team EQ are the ones who set this high standard. When they shipped their game with no hint system included, they sent a clear message that you shouldn't need any to beat it. Granted, there is a caveat. Anytime a player searches for a hint, which I promise you will happen, we must examine the context. If it is found that the thing they needed a hint for was a result of them not paying attention, or if it was something the other detectives had no problem with, then we will not count this as a point against the game's design. However, if several or even all of our detectives run into the same issue and require hints to progress, then that will be counted as a black mark against this game's mission. I'm sure some other complications are going to pop up along the way, but that's more or less what we're looking at in terms of gathering and interpreting our data. All in all, it's pretty simple, but one thing is missing, and that is a hypothesis of sorts. All these bells and whistles are cool, I guess, but do I think it's going to work? Will we actually get an accurate reading on how effective Painscreek was at its goal? My guess is it's going to be a complete crapshoot. And I mean, seriously, parts of this process are going to be like herding cats. But that's okay, because I believe there are things to be learned from this exercise, both about designing and writing mysteries. The hyperfixation is strong with this one, so I will do my best to achieve my vision. Without any further ado, let's meet our detectives. Detective number 1 is this guy named Vote for Holt. He runs a fucking Nancy Truthy YouTube channel. Alright, for real, I would be a fool not to use my own playthrough. I have access to the whole thing in HD, I have my own permission to use it, and I remember pretty well everything that happened, meaning I shouldn't have so hard of a time pulling clips. For those of you who don't know me, hi, I'm Jameson. I run this video game channel with a healthy concentration on the Her Interactive Nancy Drew games, but as of late, I've begun expanding more into video essays on game-related topics that interest me. At the time of playing the Painscreek killings, I had less than 2,000 subscribers and had just figured out how to record a facecam with OBS. This explains the horrific camera angle. Detective number 2 and the first of our 3 volunteers is Bardic Jen, a small-time Let's Player who enjoys mystery and puzzle games on her YouTube and Twitch. Jen stood out to me in the screening process because of her, shall we say, realistic approach to investigating. She has a quiet and focused demeanor, which allows her to catch things that some other investigators might be prone to missing. Outliers like her will be some good roughage for our data.
Wow, a white girl playing a murder mystery game.
Look.
Let it also be known that Jen does not enjoy horror games, and has begun playing the Painscreek killings under the premise that it contains little to no scary content. Let's see how that works out for her. Detectives number 3 and 3.5 will be Dave and Tyler from Character Select, another humble channel with several hosts that enjoys mystery, horror, and adventure games. Needless to say, these 2 goobers will have a different experience from the others, being that there are 2 of them. Will this mean double the deduction, or twice the misdirection?
Have you ever read or seen the movie The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo?
No.
Let's find out together. It should also be noted that Tyler and Dave are the only channel we will be examining that does not have a facecam, and as such, I will be mentally picturing them as the Hunch Bunch from Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf. And finally, Detective number 4 is Hedge Witch Wren. She's just your ordinary Twitch.
Oh my goodness!
Yes, we have a VTuber. I am just as scared as you are. I was very skeptical about picking Hedge Witch Wren, for reasons that might have something to do with her being a silly, goofy cartoon witch. But after screening a little bit of her footage, her bubbly banter and chat interactions have thawed my icy heart. That's another thing about her which will certainly come into play. Wren is streaming this game to a little but lively chat who will sometimes throw on the detective cap and share their own inferences about the case. At a cursory glance, it doesn't seem any of them do anything nasty like spoil the game for her, so I figured the more the merrier.
Who was murdered? This woman named Lillian.
Bruh.
All in all, Wren will bring us back to Earth by being the most casual gamer of our selection. She represents a large demographic who just wants to relax and have fun. Throughout the making of this video, Painscreek will test her patience, just like she will test my lifelong prejudice against anime women. These 5 are our bloodhounds, and in mere minutes, we will turn these bloodhounds loose on the town of Painscreek to see what they can sniff out. Time to have a look at what lies ahead of them. An important distinction made about the game's structure is made clear on page 28 of the book. The game can be considered an open-world game. This does not mean you can do anything you want and the game ends in a million possibilities. Rather, there is only one truth as to who the killer is, but the path to uncovering that truth is in the hands of the player as they can go wherever their investigation takes them. Visually, Ferry later describes the structure of the game as that of an inverted pyramid. It begins very wide and full of possibility, but the deeper you go, the more narrow the path becomes. This accounts for suspects being eliminated and progression being made in the direction of that one final truth, the very tip of the pyramid. As something of a visual aid, I've tried my hand at creating an org chart. It was kind of fun, but more importantly, it will serve as a bare-bones guide to the structure of this game. Rectangles represent objectives and locations, circles represent observations and clues, and diamonds represent keys, or key-like items that will unlock other things. The thick black lines represent the mandatory paths that will push the investigation forward, while the thin little offshoots are mainly non-essential to reaching the end of the game. You will notice several bottlenecks of progression in this chart, denoted with a red octagon. Those are where I have distinguished the act breaks to be, seeing as the game briefly becomes linear at those moments and requires you to make those specific advancements to progress. In this sense, the structure of the Painscreek killings isn't one big inverted pyramid, but instead 3 little ones. One pyramid for each act. Today we're just going to be focusing on that first pyramid, so let's have a moment to look at the contents of it. The red octagon at the bottom of Pyramid 1 is breaking into a locked car. Upon the player doing this, I would consider them to have completed the act. Tracing back up the thickest black line, we can see that the tool required to break into this car is inside the church, but the church is locked and first requires the player to visit either the hospital or the mansion to find out where the key is kept, and the hospital and the mansion are available right from the start of the game. So that's all you need to do to beat the first act of Painscreek. Once you escape the tutorial, you must find the key to the church, find the tool in the church, and use the tool to crack open the car. All of that can be done in 5 minutes flat, because literally everything else you see here is extraneous to advancing the first act. It will always be available for investigation, and it's highly likely that our detectives will go back later to check out things they previously missed, either out of thoroughness or desperation to find a lead. To be clear, following this thick black artery will result in the most efficient path to the end of the game where the killer is revealed. But by exploring the many branching capillaries of this mystery, a player may be able to successfully deduce who the killer is before the game spells it out for them, as well as uncovering some other nasty secrets the town of Painscreek has been hiding. At its core, you could call it a walking simulator, but doing so would do it a disservice. This is a walking simulator that requires thought to progress. There are clues all over Painscreek, breadcrumbs, as Ferry was fond of saying. Keep your eyes open and follow them to the source. And now, crouched at the starting line, I will give you the final spoiler warning. Please do note that this video is not a dramatic recreation of the story of Painscreek like I did for Scratches, but is instead a complete dissection. That means that throughout these videos, all major story spoilers in Painscreek killings will be revealed suddenly and unceremoniously. So I will once again urge you to play the game for yourself if you want the privilege of unraveling the story the way it was intended. Alright, I'll quit stalling. Things are about to get messy. Let the investigation begin in 3, 2, 1.
This game seeks to emulate, to a certain degree, the experience of investigating a murder case.
You will need to search each location carefully, find clues to proceed, and use your observation and deduction skills to uncover hidden secrets.
We recommend writing your own notes or taking advantage of the in-game camera.
Good luck. Why is that so menacing?
I'll save us some time by summarizing this opening voicemail. An abandoned town in what feels like the American Midwest is about to be auctioned off and bulldozed for a new development. Infamously, the mayor's wife was gruesomely murdered here in 1995, and the case was never solved. Afterwards, the town continued depopulating as the old died out and the young never returned from college, and today, in 1999, Painscreek is a ghost town, left perfectly preserved by the prior inhabitants. Just pretend that looters never existed in this universe.
Who killed Vivian Roberts?
In 1995, Vivian Roberts, a successful businesswoman and wife of a former mayor, was murdered and dragged to the front of her own home.
It was rumored that a private investigator is in Painscreek. Hey, I'm a private investigator!
We would like to revisit this story and attempt to find out the following. 1. Who killed Vivian Roberts? 2. What was their motive? 3. What was the murder weapon?
Please submit your findings and a front-page photograph for your story to be published. Richard Harris, Editor-in-Chief. Don't forget to bring the camera.
Population 0. So Painscreek itself as a town doesn't have anybody living in it anymore?
Cemetery gate, padlock 113.
Write that down, write that down!
Everyone takes note of the code to unlock the cemetery, and then journeys into the sheriff's office, a little level that serves as something of a tutorial. After the rudimentary basics of the game are taught to the player, you'll find some key items here, such as a map and a flashlight, as well as some basic information to become oriented with the case.
Oh. Vivian Roberts, successful businesswoman and wife of ex-mayor, found dead in front of her home. Third death to strike Painscreek in less than a year.
Scott Brooks, Painscreek Trinity Church pastor's son, suspected for killing Vivian Roberts. Ooh.
Vivian Roberts' funeral was held this afternoon, July 30th, 1995. Bernard the butler, Dorothy the head servant, Derek the family chauffeur, and his mom Wanda, who is fighting cancer, attended.
This letter is to inform you that you have been reassigned to Grand County starting May 14th, 1998. Okay, so the sheriff of Painscreek was relocated a year before we arrived.
Maid found her, and her name was Mary Martinez. I feel like that's important.
It's been almost 6 months since Vivian was killed. Her death still bothers me. Why was she killed? What was the killer's motive? She was someone who had earned the love and respect of the community. No employee of hers, nor any citizen of Painscreek reaped any benefit from her passing. It doesn't make any sense.
The police apprehended Scott Brooks yesterday afternoon. He was residing at the Roberts' hunting cabin by the trailhead.
Hi, this is Steven. I just wanted to make sure the package was sent. Again, I'm currently at Anne's courtyard. Any extra info you have would be much appreciated. Thank you very much. Talk to you later.
Anne's courtyard package.
Was Stephen the name of the sheriff? No, the sheriff is James Howard. Who's Stephen?
And that's pretty much everything important that we'll find in the sheriff's office right now. Way later on, we'll come back here to open up this locked filing cabinet, but in the meantime, we can forget about that. Immediately upon leaving the police station, Tyler remembers a neat feature of this game from when he played a little bit of it in the past.
So, just one random thing. If we wanted to, we just leave and go guess.
No. That was totally Scott. Mission solved.
And now, with the opening of the front gates, the paths of our investigators will begin to diverge. The Painscreek experience starts now.
I know I have a map, but, I'm just gonna go.
So right out the gate, Character Select and Ren both veered off the right side of the road and began looking at some seemingly innocuous houses. A closer examination shows that one of them is clearly not like the others.
Just like tape on this door.
Is number 7 burnt? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. There was a fire at number 7.
I'm assuming this is the town square, which means one of these buildings is the inn. Damn it, there's no, electricity in this town, is there?
Oh no, there is, great. In my haste to begin exploring the inn, I actually missed something of significance outside the building. Something Tyler and Dave ended up catching on their way in.
Is that another car?
Sure is.
What the hell's it doing here?
There is information there, however.
There's somebody else here. Can you take a picture of that?
I sure can.
Just in case we see that guy wandering around.
At the same time, Jen and Ren are definitely enjoying the freedom. Ren is just wandering around the east side of Painscreek, bouncing off every locked door she tries.
Everything's locked.
And Jen has gone west and seems to be getting her bearings. As promised by the voicemail, there is a package at the inn that was requested by one Stephen Moss.
Here's the key that you requested.
Here's the key that you requested, 7 Black Pine Road, Painscreek. Okay.
Even though it's a side quest, this will still be a very useful lead for Tyler and Dave's investigation.
There was also that message about somebody waiting for a package?
Yeah, that was the package right there, Dave. It actually unlocks the burnt down house you saw 3 minutes ago.
Champagne Lingaball.
That's not how you say that, actually.
Champagne.
Okay. Hedgewitch Wren has just found her way to Painscreek Trinity Church, which, I remind you, is locked. To find out where the key is being kept, she'll have to first visit either the hospital, mansion, or both. Anything but discouraged, Wren scuttles into the cemetery, where she begins making some unsettling discoveries.
This has already been unlocked. Oh! Oh, Trisha! Oh no! The daughter died. And Scott Brooks is dead too? They're all dead. Why are they all dead?
Visiting the cemetery early on like this has a tremendous impact on how many players will view the investigation. Discovering who is alive and who is dead is an easy way to eliminate murder suspects, as well as deducing some characters' involvements. Funny enough, the biggest clue in the cemetery doesn't even draw much attention to itself. It lies unannounced in the corner.
What's this? There isn't any marking for this one.
Back at the inn, a very telling newspaper clipping about the hospital has just been found.
Painscreek Community Hospital closes after 60 years of service. Vivian Roberts, a successful businesswoman, saw the need to revamp the hospital in the early 70s. She founded the Roberts Relief Foundation with the main purpose to support the needs of the village of Painscreek, starting with the hospital. So
Yep.
Vivian was important in revamping the place. Wait,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, bring up that paper again? Fund embezzlement suspected as key factor. Okay, that's important.
That could be part of the motive.
Here's a note. Some of our usual customers, you might want to memorize this. Hey, this is a bunch of addresses.
All of these addresses are actually of real places in Painscreek, and a lot of them can be accessed at one point or another. A beginning player would do well to use them to navigate. Alternatively, there is Jen's approach of just wandering around Painscreek and learning the layout the old-fashioned way. She's just crossed the stream and wound up at a playground on the outskirts of town.
Your playground is, by itself, across the river. No one thought that that was a bad idea?
While some might see Jen's wanderings as a detractor of this game's design, the developers are insistent that this was their intention.
So the game has actually 3 main acts, and within each act, the player is able to go anywhere they want until they reach the hardlock point, where it will require a specific key in order to move forward. It's kind of semi-open world, and it's kind of directed towards the hardlock section, but the impression that you can go anywhere you want, I think gives a lot of freedom and a lot of I think a custom experience for the player.
Right.
So the way I play and the way you play might be different, right?
Even though there is a path that the player is supposed to follow, Fairy believes it is important that the player first is given the liberty to explore, and thus stray from that path. And even if the open worldness is sometimes limited by hard-locked progression, the sentiment still remains that the player should prioritize what they deem to be important. Oh. Oh shit. Jen just found something that she wasn't supposed to find for another 10 hours. Like seriously, this locked box right here is at the end of a side quest you can do in the last 10% of the game. And she just found it right out the gate. Oh, that is a little concerning.
Interesting. I sure as hell don't have a code for that right now.
And for the mystery's sake, let's hope she doesn't find that code anytime soon. The contents of that box are not ready to be seen. Back at the inn, the boys have begun tearing apart the rooms upstairs that they have the keys to, but haven't found a thing in any of them. As it happens, the only room of any interest is the one that they don't have a key for.
Room 201 has something slipped under the door. Late rent fee for Stephen Moss. But he missed rent and was evicted.
Yeah, Stephen Moss was in 201 from 321 and never checked out.
Okay, what happened to this Stephen dude? I want to know what's in that door now.
Leaving the inn, I did notice the car that had the documents lying on the shotgun seat.
Ooh. There are some items in this car. I see an ID, too. That's weird. Who leaves that kind of shit in a car, even if you are moving?
Bardic Jen has now found a hunting cabin outside of the city limits. It's locked, but a note on the door suggests that Trisha Roberts may have a spare key.
I wonder if this is the hunting cabin or whatever that Scott was staying at?
Scott Brooks staying in a cabin was something mentioned briefly in the newspaper at the sheriff's office. There's your proof that Jen was paying attention. Before long, she finally reaches the boundaries of Painscreek and heads back to town to check out the inn.
Can we get in here? Look at that! A door that opened and led us into a building.
After her romp in the cemetery, where she learned that basically half the town died in 1995, Ren travels up Silver Lake Boulevard to the north side of town, where she stumbles upon the gates to the Roberts mansion.
There's glass on it? Oh, I can go in.
Ren will now begin investigating the mayor's mansion without having first visited the inn like the rest of us.
Why is the music spooky in here?
And then, instead of pursuing the locked house at 7 Black Pine Road that they now have a key for, Tyler and Dave come to join her.
Interessant.
Muy interessant.
I already fucking hate you guys.
Hi, this is Oliver Gibson. I just wanted to thank you for letting me borrow your toolbox and shovel.
Meanwhile at the inn, Detective Jen is finding everything the guys did, and possibly even a little more. Lots of fine print on that corkboard.
As you know, some of the victims were working fathers who were torn away from their families in an untimely manner. If any individual would like to make a contribution to the families who were affected, what happened 20 years ago?
And I spent a good 10 minutes looking for house number 7, but was not able to find it. My wanderings ultimately brought me to the cemetery, where I had many of the same epiphanies which were revealed to Hedwig Wren.
The lock has already been undone. Does that mean someone's been here recently? This was the lead suspect, wasn't it? Hold up! He died in 1995 too? This ain't right. Whose grave is this?
After enough deliberation, I finally decided to go to the scene of the crime itself, meaning that 3 of the 4 investigators have now entered the Roberts mansion. Consider the next 5 or 10 minutes to be the Roberts mansion section of this video. There's enough newspapers, diaries, and correspondence here to fill a full hour of gameplay on your first visit, and subsequent trips back to the mansion will yield even more discoveries. To the best of my ability, I will begin intercutting myself, Ren, and character select, seeing as we're all in the mansion at the same time. Unless I state otherwise, you can consider everything you see here to be shared knowledge among all 3 of us.
Da Vinci! It's a Chianti!
There's a shed here.
But it's locked and we need a code, not a key.
There's a key there.
Yeah.
And some chess pieces.
Influential citizen Vivian Roberts. She won an award. Cool.
What if the whole town's in on it? A cult and Vivian and Scott stumbled upon it? Oh, that's a good idea.
Alright, this fucking goober's name is Cetragale, and I can only assume he is Ren's biggest fan, seeing as he sends a chat virtually every 2 minutes for the combined 12 hours that she streamed this game. The nature of his comments leads me to believe that he is just as blind as Ren, so he has no shame in throwing out his own theories and observations along the ride, many of which Ren lends credence to. You might as well get used to him. He's practically our 6th investigator.
Da Vinci Chianti.
A lot of wine. A lot of booze.
I don't remember seeing the mayor's name in the graveyard. Does he have guilt in his eyes?
Dr. Henry Johnson found drowned in vehicle at the bottom of Cherry Creek Lake. Oh my god. Everyone in this town was dying.
This is 1995.
Body had been in the water 10 to 15 days.
A swimmer who chose to remain anonymous. Who are these witnesses choosing to remain anonymous? That's suspicious too.
Anyone delivering food to church on Saturdays, please lock all the doors and return the key under the flower pot before leaving. Church?
Alright, we gotta find a flower pot with a key.
Now that Tyler and Dave have found this post-it note, they have everything they need to access the church level. A similar note can be found in the hospital in case the player goes there first.
Ooh, whose diary is this?
Players are going to hear a lot of names as they read through the documents in the mansion, and it can take a little bit of studying to figure out who's who. For ease of viewing, I think I'll offer you guys the quick luxury of summarizing who all these people are. Dorothy is the nanny and oldest employee of the Roberts. Bernard is the butler, who often goes hunting with Charles the mayor. Wanda is the maid, and her son Derek is the chauffeur. Andrew is the gardener, who seems to have a drinking problem. Mary is the new maid, who is still learning the ropes. And Vivian, of course, was the woman who was gruesomely killed. Her husband was Charles Roberts, the mayor, and her daughter was Tricia, who was dating the handyman and lead suspect, Scott Brooks. Much of the mansion content in the first act is exposited through Mary's diaries, seeing as she, too, is learning who everyone is. This is a clever but at times clunky way of introducing the player to the characters.
I noticed Charles and Vivian are never together much. Even when they are both at home, they don't seem happy what is going on. So the married couple was not very happy.
One by one, Ren, Character Select, and myself have all made the same discoveries on the first floor. The low-hanging fruit, if you will. Meanwhile, Bardic Jen has proven herself to be the only detective who can properly interpret an address. Using the note she found at the inn and the map she found at the sheriff's office, she tracks down the house that Stephen Moss requested a key for. Lo and behold, she arrives at a burnt-down house on the waterfront. Caution to the wind, she ventures inside.
Andrew shouted at me for walking on the grass, although I was sure I didn't step on it this time. He's always drunk anyways. Who wrote this? The newest maid, I would assume.
It'll tell us. Mary Martinez.
Okay.
So I don't think she has any motive to kill. What about that Andrew fella? But he's like always drunk or something like that.
The Hunch Bunch here are thinking logically. A potentially belligerent drunk hanging around the mansion would be a likely suspect for a violent murder. But there's a hole in their theory, though, one that they don't know about yet. And that's that Andrew Reed died 6 weeks before Vivian did. He burnt to death in his home, which Jen is exploring now.
Dear Daniel, how have you been, my son? It's been a while since I last wrote to you. I'm now working full-time at the mansion. The hallucinations are gone. How's Mom doing? Is she still working at that restaurant? I hope she spends enough time with you. I don't blame her for leaving, and I wish I could be there for you. I'm sorry things turn out this way. Please forgive me.
The further you explore 7 Black Pine Road, the more abundantly clear it becomes that drinking was just the start of Andrew's problems.
For us. Is that how it burned down? The candles? Uh-oh. Poor Daniel's dad. May 12th, 94. I hate to admit it, but Scott is a good kid. He's hardworking, takes care of me when I'm drunk. He's a man of his word. I'm starting to like him. Is this Daniel's diary or his dad's? Did I see her again? How can that be? Why doesn't the medication work anymore? Did he give me cheap pills? No, that can't be. He's as guilty as I am. This is before Vivienne was killed. Ever since Scott asked about her, I've started to see Sophia again. Why'd he have to mention her? I need more pills. I think I'm going crazy. I know that nothing I do will bring her back. I pray that our sins do not pass down to our children. Please forgive us for what we have done. There are some... Andrew Reed's story. We've seen that name before. More often than not, people with mental illnesses are the victims of crimes, not the perpetrators. But of course, this is a video game.
Oh. I can't even lie to you. Jen has done a fantastic job at House 7. She's found literally every single clue left behind here, including the one behind the door, which is pretty easy to miss.
I thought this would be Daniel receiving this letter and keeping it, but you know what? This is probably Andrew writing this letter and not sending it. So this is Andrew's house.
But there is one final clue here that happens outside the house as soon as you leave. And this one is probably the easiest to miss. Let's see if she notices.
Oh my god. What the fuck? Be more creepy. Challenge. God, I knew that would happen.
Bear in mind that this is an optional encounter. You can beat the entire game without ever once visiting this house and seeing that figure in the woods. Jen has now witnessed what she believes to have been a ghostly woman stalking her. This will impact how she plays the game going forward.
There better not be any ghosts jump scare brutalizing me at some point. I'll be really pissed.
20 years later, Painscreek still honors the lives of coal mine workers. This was from 1993. 6 members of this village perished in one of the coal mine demolition programs. It belonged to the Roberts. The Roberts are a coal mine family. They're evil. I don't make the rules.
There's 2 notes and a diary in here. Our cup runneth over.
I was cleaning Mrs. Roberts' tea room when I stumbled across a pile of letters full of negative comments addressed to her. Why on earth does she keep those letters?
I had to interact with Bernard today. His left wrist was swollen pretty badly, so he can't help with writing Easter invitations this year. I told him he only needs his right hand. He looked at me as if I was joking. How could I have known that he was left-handed? Okay, you know what? I'm writing that down. That sounds important. We have a left-handed character, and he's the butler, so the butler always does it.
I was about to clean the gallery when I noticed the door was already slightly open. I looked inside and saw Mr. Roberts sitting in front of a painting. Right before he left, I heard a faint click as he was leaving the gallery. It's just a painting of an old woman with a white headband. I wonder what's so interesting about this lady.
There's a secret.
Okay, gallery, secret passageway.
Need to report Scott to Bernard. His suspicious acts are getting out of hand. Today I saw him peeking into Mr. and Mrs. Roberts' room from the window. He's been told many times now not to do this. Interesting.
Derek? Charles and Bernard, hey.
Woman with a white headband. Right there. Shit.
Ah, shit.
We need a code.
1993. We went hunting this afternoon. Scott's quite a fast learner and has good manners, too. Trisha's been rather obvious in her interest. He's a good-looking young man and respectful to others. I don't mind his status. There's nothing wrong with being an orphan. If there is, it's the parents' fault. Sometimes I feel like he's like a son to me. Wow. So, this Scott dude was really in with the family.
Alternatively, Ren and Cetragale devise a theory that Scott could have been a little too in with the family.
Scott was an orphan? Yeah. And it says in this diary, sometimes I feel like he's a son to me. Is he Charles' son? And Charles doesn't know? Gotta make a note. There's a chance that Charles cheated on Vivian. Yeah, and there's a possibility that he has no idea that he fathered a child. Vivian discovered my affair! Oh my god, I could have just read the next fucking page. Sometimes I feel sorry for her. I think it was because of Trisha that she didn't leave me. She's a good wife and a good mother. I'm grateful for that. Sometimes I feel sorry for her? Bro, you cheated on her. That was a juicy journal.
July 12th, 1995. Dr. Johnson is dead. He was the head of Painscreek Community Hospital, as well as the Roberts family doctor. The police came by and asked if Vivian would be willing to go down to the station for another interview. She came back on the evening and assured us that everything was okay. She had nothing to do with Dr. Johnson's death, and his death was purely accidental. Hang on. Vivian was a suspect for the doctor's death? That's kind of very, very interesting.
Okay, so it looks like Vivian Roberts has been just like a generally philanthropic, kind, generous person or something.
Well, I mean, they say, you know, what sins are these good acts meant to buy off, right?
Model citizen, everybody loves her, pays her taxes, etc. But, like, how many babies has she actually eaten?
As our three detectives leave the mansion, they are all coming away with the same major deductions. They know that the mayor cheated on his wife, the gardener was a drunk, the daughter's boyfriend was spying on her parents, the butler was left-handed, and that a key to the church is being kept in a flower pot outside. Bardic Jen still hasn't gone to the Roberts mansion, but she has now been to the cemetery and seen all the things that Ren and I saw.
Oh, Trisha died? Scott died in 95 as well. And what the hell is this?
She also found the tomb of Andrew Reed, which has more meaning to her than it did to us.
Oh my goodness, I wonder what happened to him. Did he burn in the house?
At this point, Jen is on her second episode of Painscreek Killings and is really enjoying the game.
I have so many questions. I love this. I love this so much.
Immediately after, Jen makes her way up the road to the church, where Scott Brooks, the orphaned lead murder suspect, was raised by the priest, Matthew. Unfortunately, though, since Jen hasn't found the clue about the church key, she won't be able to get inside yet. Not before she...
Love that it's shaped like a cross.
Bardic Jen has once again sequence broken. By sheer luck, she's managed to find this key without first visiting the mansion or the hospital. And this isn't a catastrophe like her finding the box inside the tree stump could have been, but it's definitely going to give her a unique perspective of things. Mainly that she'll now get to know who Scott Brooks was before the Roberts, and also that she could have that car open before visiting the hospital or mansion.
Every house has such freaking spooky music.
Obviously, it's too early to draw conclusions, but it seems fairly obvious that somehow the death of the doctor had something to do with Vivian's death.
I mean, they wouldn't put it... I mean, meta game knowledge, they wouldn't put it in here if it was unrelated. Well, I mean, I guess they could. Just as, like, a red herring.
Yeah. We also have to find a Slim Jim.
Hedgewitch Wren has just found her way into Anne's Inn in the town square, and is picking up some of the clues that the others found earlier.
Oh, this was the celebration of... Well, it's not celebration, the memorial for all the people who died in the mine.
Meanwhile, Character Select has gotten slightly sidetracked on their way to the church and have begun poking around the cemetery. And I have somehow gotten so lost in my search for the church that I ended up finding House 7 on Blackpine by accident.
And something weird's going on here. Looks like caution tape, and the mailbox has been knocked off. Oh, hang on, this house burnt down! What is that, an opencast? Baitcast? Yeah, it's a baitcaster. I have one of those. No fucking idea how to use it. Cool, let's go check out the burnt down house.
I like the stone floor. That is aesthetic. Mansion worker Andrew Reed's charred body found in his burnt home. Body covered with third-degree burns. I will stay at the cabin tonight. I don't need dinner.
Back at the cemetery, Tyler and Dave are learning that a lot of people died in 1995.
Trisha Roberts.
Wait, Trisha's dead?
Clearly, this was not something they had anticipated after visiting the mansion.
What? That's interesting.
Tyler and Dave then hoof it over to the church, where they set to work looking for the key.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, it's rust-colored.
Ah, but we found it. We would never have found that if we didn't know.
Oh, you'd think so, wouldn't ya?
Ren just finished up at the inn and is now adventuring into the west side of town. She passes through a gate, much like the one that led to the Roberts mansion, in search of the church.
Is this the church?
Nope, it's the hospital. The hospital is the second largest level in the game, just behind the mansion. Unlike the mansion, however, there's really nothing you need to see or do in here until the third act of the game. Even so, there's plenty of valuable side quests that begin inside, which will help you crack the case even in Act 1.
Father Matthew forgets his key. Yeah.
Having a look at the documents on the front desk, Ren makes a very interesting observation on the guest check-in sheet.
So Father Matthew visited Trisha in the hospital twice.
Happy-go-lucky, she wanders through the creepy old building. Speaking of creepy old buildings, I am currently making the same discoveries that Jen did at House 7.
Oh, there's some freaky shit up here. Oh, there's some freaky shit up here. I don't like that.
So something about me that uniquely affects my playthrough is that while I do really enjoy horror games, the one genre of horror that really just fucks with me like no other is definitely the occult. And opening the bedroom door in this burnt down house and finding this on the ground has put me on edge in ways I was not expecting.
No, you did not just become a horror game. Fuck you, Painscreek Killings. I did not sign up for this. 1994, ever since Scott asked about her, I've started to see Sophia again. Why did he have to mention her? I need more pills. Okay, Sophia is another name. That's who he hallucinates. Andrew Reed's story. Okay, so Andrew Reed is the one who was hallucinating. And I think I saw his tombstone out in the cemetery.
Very important to note, I did not actually close the door upstairs behind me, and as such I never saw the whole message, she is coming for us. Had I done so, I may have reacted very differently to what happened next.
What the hell? Who are you? Who the fuck are you? Who the fuck are you? I see you. There's a person there. And he's gone.
Okay, did you catch that?
Oh, fuck this.
I said, and he's gone. I don't express it very much in this moment, but something super important just happened here. Bardic, Jen, and I each saw this figure very briefly, and each of us saw different things. She saw a woman with long hair. I saw a guy wearing a hoodie. Jen seems to think she saw a ghost, and I'm inclined to believe I just saw a stalker, possibly even the killer watching me from the tree line. Regardless of who that really was, Jen and I are now playing two completely different games. She's solving a mystery in a haunted town, and I'm being stalked by some cultist in a hoodie. See how one little misconception can do that?
I am not alone in Painscreek.
I've already seen one ghost. Okay? I don't know how I feel about going into basements.
On the second floor of the church, Jen finds Scott's bedroom.
Huh.
The place has hardly changed from when he was adopted as a 10-year-old kid. Right away, she finds a little wood-carved airplane toy with a date inscribed at the bottom. She snaps a photo. Then she finds the diary of 10-year-old Scott Brooks, beginning the day that he was adopted by Father Matthew.
Father Matthew brought me to the attic today. There's so many wooden toys, and he made them all himself. He asked me to choose one that I liked. I chose a toy plane. It looked cool. Looked so cool. He said he can teach me carpentry when I'm a bit older. He made a secret space for me in my room.
So, something a little interesting about Scott's bedroom is that while I haven't actually marked it as mandatory for the first act of the game, it is mandatory to complete for the second act, meaning that if players don't find everything in here now, they will have to come back later and do so. Jen finds the secret safe, of course hidden behind a poster of an airplane, which is the player's hint that the combination is the date inscribed on the bottom. She condenses it into 4 digits, and then...
Let's meet at our secret hideout at 5 p.m. Code changed to 8831.
Jet hasn't been there yet, but this code actually opens the little shed with the keys in it behind the Roberts mansion, the one that Tyler and Dave were looking through. That will be very important later.
More diary. 1990.
Another one of Scott's diaries chronicle the thoughts of an 11-year-old boy. It's clear that at a young age he's developed a crush on Trisha Roberts. Things only get complicated when Derek Tyler is first mentioned, Scott and Trisha's best friend. He's 5 years older than the both of them and begins working for Trisha's dad as the chauffeur pretty early on. Scott gets pretty jealous about this because he wants a job so he can buy nice things for Trisha, and he's always felt weird that Derek is very protective of Trisha. Have you noticed the problem brewing here?
There's a secret room in the mansion? I can't believe it. I can't wait till Saturday to explore it with Trisha. And a baseball.
Jen is cleaning house in the church. Apart from a couple documents, all she has left to do here is find the Slim Jim that opens the car in the town square. Tyler and Dave have just entered the church and read on a bulletin on the wall that a guy named Andrew Reed has died.
Andrew Reed. Okay. Who the hell is Andrew Reed?
I don't know, but write that down. 'Cause there's a lot of people dying around the same time.
They haven't been to the burnt down house though, so it means nothing to them, and they only heard the name Andrew in Mary's diaries and never learned his last name. As such, they don't recognize that this was the Roberts gardener. They also didn't notice the newspaper on the church pew that goes into explicit detail about his death. That would have been pretty good to know about. They do find the confessional booth that has a strange 6-digit lock on the seat. It seems to hold the secret compartment. Jen found this too, but wasn't able to open it either. The combination comes to light in Act 2.
This is also where Scott was living, don't forget.
Yes.
I will stay at the cabin tonight. I don't need dinner. Okay, there's a cabin.
Jen has now wormed her way into Father Matthew's study, where she finds a 4-digit lock on one of his desk drawers. That can be opened much later, but what's important now is that Jen opens the other drawer, the one which has the key to the church storage room on the first floor. Jen? Jen, where are you going?
Nothing here.
Jen, you just need to open that drawer and you get the Slim Jim to open the... there goes Jen's lead. Okay, well, the good news is that Jen can still do plenty of exploring in Painscreek, but she won't be able to open that car door until she eventually returns to this church. Let's just hope she's able to figure that out without having to get a hint. At the hospital, Ren has just found a little pendant in the desk with the date 1964 and something written in Latin.
Ex nihilo nihil fit.
Then she starts sniffing around the whole hospital, intent on finding its secrets.
Graphic design is my passion. Oh, a map. This is good. You know, just thought I'd check. What's this? Wanda.
Interesting. Behind the paintings. There we go.
Tyler and Dave have torn Scott's room apart. They find the safe after ransacking the room, just like Jen did, and then punch in the code on the plane.
Try 0305?
What are you doing with those zeros? There's no zeros in the date.
Try 0406.
Why do you keep putting zeros in it? There's no zeros in...
Damn it.
Dudes, you have the combination. Just punch it in.
Alright.
No, come on!
Alright, well, we're done here for now.
They literally had the code but put it in wrong. What a bummer. Unlike Jen, this setback won't prevent them from ending Act 1, but it will definitely come back to bite them in the ass later if they forget about it. I visited the cemetery again, this time to confirm that Andrew Reed's tombstone was there.
So he died the same time everyone else did.
And then I ended the second episode of my playthrough, but not without first making a plan for how I was going to continue my investigation.
So I think I'm going to call it here for today, but I have a pretty good idea of what we're doing next time. And that's going to be going to the Painscreek Community Hospital to see if we can find a record of Andrew's illness and what may have caused it.
Sounds like I'll be joining Ren in no time.
Okay, now let's go. Let's go to the mansion.
Unfortunately, it looks like Jen has been reading her map upside down.
This is the hospital. Let's go to the hospital, guys, not the mansion.
Looks like she'll be joining us at the hospital too.
Welcome back to Character Select, Dave and Tyler. Turn the tools back to the storage room. We have a storage room key.
It's a good thing the priest wrote a reminder to himself that he put his tools away.
Scott Brooks pleads not guilty to killing ex-mayor's wife, Vivian Roberts. He met with Vivian in the woods that night, but went home after the meeting and did not step out of his cabin for days. When he left her, Vivian was still alive. So, that's the window, isn't it? From 11:30 to 11:50, the night she died.
Right.
Presumably.
So we have a 20-minute window that we need to get trap somebody in.
There's also a totally not computer-generated photo of Scott and his priest father, Matthew. What a happy bunch they are. The boys open up the storage room pretty easy and are absolutely delighted to find...
Jimmy!
Also of interest to them is a locked toy chest on the floor labeled Scott's Things.
We don't have a key for that.
Damn it.
Jen finds the basement of the hospital very quickly and also finds that it is completely locked.
Matthew Brooks came to visit Trisha Roberts, and so... No. Scott Brooks is the suspicious character. He is the pastor's son, and he was an orphan, and he was also pretty in with the Roberts family. He was seeing Trisha Roberts and Mr. Roberts, I think his name was Charles, kind of liked Scott. He was well received by the family. And it says here that Matthew Brooks, who I'm assuming is his father, the pastor, came to visit Trisha Roberts while she was interned here. That's interesting. I'm not going to write that down. It's easy enough to remember. If Father Matthew forgets his key, place it under the flower pot next to the church. Hey, we found this clue at the Roberts mansion. So that's interesting. There's multiple clues that allude to the same thing based on what order you play the game in.
Jen takes a moment to look at a strange flyer that absolutely does not belong in a hospital.
Are ghosts real? Well, in this universe, apparently. I've already seen one.
This further validates her theory, though, that the figure she saw outside of Andrew Reed's house was, in fact, a ghost.
Another key. Medical record room. Yes.
Just around the corner, Ren has found a doctor's office with an electronic lock.
Oh, it needs a key card. That's high tech for 1999.
Luckily, she finds one just down the hall.
Nothing. Oh. Except for this. Hello.
It belonged to Dr. Henry Johnson. He was the guy who was found drowned in his car at the bottom of the lake. Which means that this office could be his. This, of course, is a scripted moment to prevent players from getting into that office too early. But the circumstances of it really make you wonder why the power went out at that moment.
Powers off.
On the other side of the hospital, I've managed to find the room that Wanda Tyler was staying in for her cancer treatment, where she's left behind a load of diaries.
December 16th, 1995. Sometimes I wonder if my life had any meaning at all. Having mostly worked my whole life for the Roberts family, what will people say at my funeral? Will Derek think of me as a mother who was always there for him? I could have done so much more, if only there was more time. Oh, that's pretty sad.
At the nurse's station, I find a clue about how to open up locked cars, and then share a thought I had while editing the previous sessions.
That car that we found, and from some other evidence that I looked into, I'll bet that Stephen Moss, the guy that left that voicemail at the sheriff's department, I'll bet he was the private investigator that we heard about at the very beginning. And I'll bet that he's gone missing, or he's somewhere in this town, and he left his car there, parked in front, locked up, and he was probably the one who got the key sent to him at the inn, and he never picked it up. Ooh, key to Wanda Tyler's room.
That's actually not a key to her room, but to her house. I wonder how long it's going to take me to figure that out.
Alright, so we need to go back to the main square to get into that fucking car.
Yeah.
Because that's the only car that we saw that had anything in it.
Tyler and Dave are going in for the kill. The two of them have played a very efficient investigation and are ready to now open this car. As such, I will now be pausing them, and we will learn together what is inside this car when everyone else catches up.
This? Why is this one open?
Ren has climbed to the second floor, where she finds room 206 suspiciously ajar. It looks like a terminally ill child by the name of Hannah was staying in this room and was trading letters with a friend named Nicole.
Dear Hannah, I heard from my mom that you're not feeling well and have to be in the hospital from now on, so I wrote this letter to say I'm very sorry for what I said to you last time. I just wanted our time capsule to be perfect. And you can decide where we should bury it, I promise.
Ren gets pretty wrapped up in the details of this room, but to be perfectly honest, this is all a complete red herring. This subplot here provides very little ammunition for going forward in the mystery. It can ultimately be skipped entirely.
Why is there a blood splatter on this? Hello? Playground, behind hunting cabin, cemetery, and then a fourth option. I'll take a picture of that. Ooh.
Jen is diligently searching through some more red herrings on the second floor when she is suddenly accosted by her roommate.
Wow, white girl playing a murder mystery game.
Look. Don't have to call me out like that.
Then she makes her way up to the third floor, or the roof, as we Americans would say, and finds a broken railing overlooking the front of the building.
Someone could fall and die.
And I have finally found the medical records room, where I'm ready to invade some patient confidentiality.
Gonna shut that behind me so that the freaky dude in the hoodie from last episode doesn't show up.
A day later, you can tell I'm still thinking about that.
Hello again, Miss Roberts. How are you doing? What should we talk about today? The The nurses have notified me that you haven't been eating your meals.
Trisha wouldn't speak. Okay. Wanda Tyler's. This is her information. Oh my god, wait, no, there's gonna be a shit ton of names in here, so this is the tease, really. Raymond Brown, Kyle Thornton, Andrew Reed, here we go. He was on Apracolam. Frequency 2 times a day. Length of therapy 2 weeks. Henry Johnson is the one who gave him the prescription, yeah. Okay, that didn't tell us much about what Andrew was suffering from.
This is actually the second half of a very important clue, but at the time it went completely over my head. So we'll just come back to it in the post-act review.
Can somebody let Catherine know that I found her missing pin and I placed it in one of the drawers in the lobby? She's wondering I found it in the basement storage. Catherine's pin!
That is the second clue that is supposed to tell you how to open Catherine's locker, a side quest which I'm not sure everyone will piece together. Eventually, though, Jen does see the clue about Catherine's pin and deduce that the 1964 on it must be the combination to her staff locker. Inside, she finds this logbook containing several strange accounts of things happening at the hospital, and the last one is of particular interest to her.
I was at the end of the hallway when I saw a young lady standing outside Dr. Johnson's office. It was 11:15 p.m. and the visiting hours were over. I called out to her. She turned to me and promptly walked away. I couldn't be exactly sure, but I thought she looked drenched. I looked out the window. It wasn't raining. Is that Sophia?
Jen has taken a special interest in this Sophia character, the one who Andrew Reed was supposedly having hallucinations of.
Keycard. Yes.
This ought to be good.
Forget what was, it was something, fuck. I can't do this. Alright, I'm done. This has been fun. This has been a good game.
Let the record show that both Jen and Ren did wildly overreact to the power going off, when in reality it is not that scary. Ah! Alright, I was a little scared.
Close it behind me! Close it! What the fuck do you mean it's locked? It's open! Close the... fuck this, I'm done with the hospital, okay? We totally missed stuff here. We'll deal with it later.
There's still just one major discovery at the hospital that is yet to be found, until Jen walks right over it on her way out of the building.
Oh man. Somebody did die here.
This more or less concludes everything a player can find at the hospital at this stage. The biggest takeaways are knowing that Trisha was interned, finding the key to Wanda Tyler's house, the jump scare with the power suggesting someone doesn't want you to enter that doctor's office, and, again, the clue about how to get into the church. A thing which Ren and I still need to do. And Jen still needs to go back because she missed the damn Slim Jim.
I don't think Trisha was suicidal. Her mom and her boyfriend died. That's what I was wondering because she was going through therapy, so I'm curious. Well, it seemed like she was going through therapy, and also she was visited by Father Matthew several times while she was in the hospital, which is kind of sus. I suspect him.
I'm beginning to vent more and more about how the game is stressing me out.
This shit is honestly, like, much scarier to me than, like, a game where I'm being chased by a monster. And, like, a survival horror game.
Ren is still looking for Andrew Reed's house in the complete wrong part of town.
We're 7! If 8 is here, where the fuck is 7?
And Jen is going for the world record of most progress made without ever having visited the actual scene of the crime. Using documents found at the hospital, she has tracked down Wanda Tyler's home and begun looking around inside. The Tylers used to live at the mansion together before moving here around the time Derek turned 6. Coming here this early is optional, but still available. Ren has completely leaned into the red herring found upstairs in the hospital about the 2 girls who wanted to bury a time capsule, and as such, she has been searching all the locations that they listed as potential spots to bury it, beginning with the playground.
Hello.
Again, there is no such time capsule here or any follow-up to that letter at all, but she is dangerously close to the... Damn it!
I found it!
Well, that's 2 out of 4 investigators now who have found the top secret box in the bottom of the tree stump that contains endgame secrets. But it gets worse. On the other side of town, I'm searching for the key that I know is hidden in one of the flower pots outside the church. In my meticulous search, I go a little further to the right than the developers intended, and...
That is important.
Alright, I'll just come right out and tell you. That is the code that unlocks the box in the tree stump. And of course, neither the box in the tree stump or the code are supposed to have been found by the player this early in the game. The good news is that the only people who have found the box have not also found the code, and vice versa. So long as these 2 discoveries remain separate, no harm done. I might even forget that I saw the code in the first place.
That's going down with the felt pen.
Damn it, that does not bode well.
Aha!
Oh, now you find it! In the lovely home of the Tyler family, Jen is busying herself in the personal and confidential writings of a 16-year-old boy.
Dr. Johnson said the chemo sessions are needed due to the late-stage cancer and that she would need my support more than ever. Upon leaving, I saw Scott walking in with Dr. Johnson. They looked serious. I wonder if Scott found a new job after being fired. Yeah, Dr. Johnson knew something.
Ren decides that she, too, would like to get into Wanda Tyler's house, but doesn't remember the address. It's written on the key! She decides to go back to the hospital and see if she can't find the Tyler's address there. And on the way in, she notices the chalk outline.
Somebody did die here. What? Why is there just a chalk outline here?
Still undeterred, Ren's plan actually works pretty well. She finds the address to Wanda's home in the medical documents room, and then goes back to the main village to track it down.
Mansion worker Andrew Reed's charred body found in his burnt home. Okay, so he died in the fire. And so now we know that he wasn't the dude who watched us go into the house. Cause of fire has not yet been determined, but the sight of alcoholic bottles on the floor suggests that the carpet may have soaked and helped increase whatever set the incident off. Yeah, I think it was a knocked over candle, not gonna lie. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna use my brain for a second. Those candles probably weren't there at the time of death. Because, you know, they would have melted in a fire. And I'm assuming the developers realized that. So maybe people broke into the house and did some weird voodoo shit after it burnt down. Ah! Why? Please be locked. Okay. Exit?
Yeah, Yoshi, is this door supposed to say exit?
That makes me feel like that's a different load zone under there. And I really don't like that thought.
Upstairs in a closet, Jen has found a very juicy diary that belonged to Wanda.
Vivian is being hospitalized for mental instability. Magdalene wants a boy to continue the family line, so that must be Charles's mother. Not being able to have children anymore will be devastating for Vivian. I pity her. I just can't stand Sophia. She's not that pretty. Just barely a year working here and the others are already serving her hand and foot. She's just here to take advantage of the Roberts family. I don't trust her. I wish she'd just disappear. So, Sophia worked at the Roberts house.
Coat hanger. I don't suppose we can use one of these to break into the car. Hey, we got a safe. 1203. Oh, come on, really?
Okay, now this is a problem. In the industry, we call this brute forcing, and it is the enemy of intended progression. Basically, I know that the number 1203 is important for some reason, so from now on, whenever I see a lock with 4 digits, I will always try that combination. I mean, it makes sense for me as the player, but it's not at all how the developers intended for me to solve these puzzles. Unfortunately, in my excitement, I did not examine the plane close enough to see the code on it. In fact, I kind of looked at it from the exact perfect angle to see everything but the code. That's gonna set me back a bit. Clever Ren has done a good job of tracking down the Tyler's house just as Jen is wrapping up her search there.
His bike hit the fence and he was launched into the air, landing on the rocks by the riverbank. This was in 1990. There's blood coming from his head and scratches all over his arms and legs. Trisha came up to him and tended to his wounds. She seemed to be sobbing. Even though Scott was the one bleeding, I think I'm hurting more than him. Yeah, okay, sure. I'm gonna put this in Derek's file. Crush on Trisha. Why doesn't she realize that I like her? Oh, brother, you are so painfully desperate.
The diary in Wanda Tyler's house is Ren's first time hearing the name Sophia. Even so, she takes particular notice of it.
Oh, Wanda wants Sophia to disappear. I think Sophia is a maid, but I haven't seen mention of her before, because Mary was the only maid I know of.
Both Jen and Ren also find a broken drawer in Wanda's bedroom that needs some kind of tool to pry it open. This will be revisited much later. Meanwhile, I am now trying the code 1203 on the locked drawer in Father Matthew's desk. Doesn't work again.
Nothing is 1203. As to why he was at the cabin, he did not even know that Vivian had been murdered, so he was staying in the cabin and had been away for several days when he found out about the murder. But the last thing he did before leaving town was apparently, we have a key in there, was apparently meet with Vivian. A key! As long as it's not a basement key. He said he left some tools in here. And here they are. Is that the thing? An old-fashioned Slim Jim.
Finally, after going literally everywhere else, Jen has decided to go to the Roberts mansion. I will skip pretty much the entire hour she spent exploring there, as much of the information she found will be redundant to you. But there are several aha moments where Jen makes distinctions using knowledge only she is privy to. After exploring the Tyler's house, Ren has learned an interesting mechanic of the game. It seems that keyholes with the unlock prompt are the only doors that can actually be opened, whereas the others are purely there for decoration. Using this information, which I remind you would not be something a detective could use in real life, she pokes around the Tyler's neighborhood and finds another keyhole with the unlock prompt. A complete shot in the dark, she tries the key she found in the butler's locker hours ago, and it's a match.
Oh! Whose house is this?
Ren has now entered the home of Bernard Hopkins, the butler, which is an exceptionally difficult thing to do in Act 1, because unless I'm mistaken, the address cannot be found anywhere yet. Her entering this home was a matter of brute forcing keys and recognizing patterns in the lock hitboxes. Jen takes notice of the shed out back, but doesn't yet realize that she has the combination to open it from Scott's safe. Then when she reads the newspaper about Dr. Henry Johnson's death, her experiences in the hours past give her a unique perspective to the information.
A swimmer who chose to remain anonymous said he was diving in the lake when he saw what appeared to be a red car glittering at the bottom of the lake. He swam towards the vehicle and was shocked to see a body in the driver's seat. He quickly called the police. 3 hours later, the vehicle was pulled out of the lake and the body was identified as Dr. Henry Johnson. So Sophia... I don't know why I'm assuming that Sophia is the ghost, but I am. She's appeared once to me outside of the house where Andrew Reed died, and then she appeared to a nurse outside of Dr. Johnson's office when he died, it seems.
After exploring the mansion, Jen is underwhelmed by her discoveries. Most of the things she found here were inconsequential, seeing as she learned much of the same stuff elsewhere.
So what did I find here though? I found a key to another house. It was in Bernard's locker, so it was probably for Bernard's house. Where's Bernard's house? Not sure.
But then, when she reviews the photos she took in her camera, she realizes that she has a combination to Scott and Trisha's secret hideout. She now knows from a diary that she read here that the secret hideout is the shed behind the mansion, and now she can open it.
8831, let's go. Oliver from the photo lab borrowed a shovel and a wrench. Andrew. P.S. We have extras, so I told him he could keep the tools until he was done with them. Yes, so I heard.
Jen finds several keys in here. One is to Trisha's nightside drawer, and the other opens the attic. The drawer key is no good right now because the room it's in is currently locked, but it will be super important in Act 2. Funny enough, there are also some chess pieces in the shed that have numbers written on the bottom. This is the start of an optional puzzle that can be solved much, much later. Back over on Silver Lake Road, Ren is exploring what must be the goofiest designed house in the entire game. Bernard Hopkins lived alone and enjoyed collecting and displaying fire axes and knives. It's me as fuck.
The axe display cabinet has been shattered.
Ren also finds several books about Vivian Roberts, suggesting Bernard admires her. Further into the house, she finds a locked room that she can't get into, and another interesting diary. Immediately, it mentions Sophia.
2 weeks ago, Scott came to me and asked about Sophia.
This is the second time now that Ren has read about Sophia, and she seems to be getting an interest in her too.
Okay, so Sophia... It looks like she was once a maid.
Ren then uncovers what I can only classify as the worst designed puzzle in the game. The issue here is that it's a puzzle you cannot solve until later, but it's presented in a way as if you can solve it now with a little algebra. Okay, so the full dart game is supposed to have 6 darts, 3 yellow and 3 red. This game only has 4 darts on the board and 2 scattered throughout the room. This is the game's way of trying to tell you that there's no way of knowing what the score was without more information, but unfortunately, this is communicated very poorly because of one microscopic detail. This fucking pixel. For whatever reason, the dartboard has what I can now only assume is a dead pixel. A solid black speck that is just on the board for no reason. The trouble is, a player will see this and instinctively think, oh, that's where one of the darts must have been. This then leads to a long and pointless process of trying to use algebra to figure out what the dart's total was. Ren spends a good 10 minutes trying to math it out before finally giving up. But in her search for the missing darts, she does come across this.
A bloodstained wood panel. I need a tool to pull out the nails. Hello? That's suspicious. Yeah, I think I should come back to this. Because there's something missing. It just feels like there's not enough clues.
Bardic Jen has just entered the Roberts attic, an optional zone which only leads to more optional but insightful content.
Secret safe instruction. Insert the clock key, set the time, turn the key. Tea time.
Inside the attic, she finds a clue to help solve a puzzle later on, and a series of diaries written by Derek Tyler, the chauffeur.
I didn't feel well today. I had a nightmare last night. I cannot remember what it was like, but it was unnerving. I see Scott all the time now. Since he has started working at the mansion, he's always with Trisha. I used to be the one to hang out with Trisha. Today Scott came and asked if I know anything about Father Calvin. I only knew him as a previous church pastor before Father Matthew took over. I told Scott to ask Matthew about it. Scott didn't say anything and laughed. That was 94. Huh. I wonder what in the world. Okay, so I think when I get achievements like that, that means I've found all of that person's writings.
Oh! I ran into the church!
Ren has just arrived at the church and is looking for the key being kept in the flower pot outside. In so doing, she's getting dangerously close to the numbers on the wall, and holy shit, she was looking right at them! If Ren found those numbers, this whole story would be fucked.
Which fucking flower pot is it? There's like 10 billion. Oh.
Scanning the footage, it looks like Jen first tried the key in Bernard's locker on Dorothy's house, which didn't work of course, and then she went to the other side of town to see if she couldn't find a door she previously had identified as unlockable. It seems that she, too, is wise to the trick of how EQ Studios names the hitboxes of usable locks. A couple minutes of thorough exploration later, and she has found Bernard's home. That makes 2 of our detectives, who have now gotten into a location that the developers didn't even intend to be accessed in Act 1. As we've seen with Ren, though, there is nothing game-breaking with this sequence break.
This better have something in it, because I don't know what to do now. Guess he was a military veteran. Maybe a hunter. The axe display cabinet has been shattered. A knife is missing from the case. Yeah, that's like a combat knife. A blood-stained wood panel. I need a tool to pull out the nails. January 94. 2 weeks ago, Scott came to me and asked about Sophia. I was surprised he knew about someone who used to work here 20 years ago. I told him she was once a maid that worked here, but after a few years she decided to leave the village. Okay. Today I commented about the conversation to Vivian. She asked if Scott had said or asked anything else since then. I could see she felt uneasy. She told me to keep an eye on him. I found all this very unsettling.
And then, after reading the diary on this desk, Jen gets caught up in the dreaded darts puzzle for the same reason that Ren did.
I guess I'd better go look at the dartboard again.
Oh, wait. Ah, poor Jen. She never actually closed the door to the study and never saw the dartboard on the back of it because of that. Meaning she's now going all the way back to the inn to look at the dartboard there because she thinks that's what the note in Bernard's desk is referring to. That is going to eat a lot of her time and only serve to distract her from the rest of the game. I remind you, this puzzle cannot yet be solved.
Did Scott live in the church? That's what I'm thinking. I think... Oh no, Matthew adopted him. I read that in a document. Father Matthew adopted Scott. So he was living here. Oh! I'm gonna close that. Just, real quick. A little box. Ah! Photo of previous pastor, Father Calvin. All these people with their fucking codes and shit. Matthew and Scott. I returned the tools back to the storage room. Tools! Tools! I slimmed him! I can use this to break into cars now. Yas!
In her excitement, Ren actually left the church before finding Scott's bedroom. A room which, I remind you, is completely unlocked and available. Now she's just breaking into every car she sees, not even the one with the documents in it.
Who locks their glove box?
Jen is now completely debilitated after spending 30 minutes or longer trying to solve the darts puzzle. Completely out of leads, she has now returned to the cemetery to see if she can't find the grave of Bernard's father, John, hoping that that might elucidate some lead in the case. It doesn't.
Victoria Hopkins? Jonathan Hopkins. Died in 73.
She also takes notice of Father Calvin's grave and makes a very interesting observation.
He died like the year before Scott was adopted by Father Matthew. Also, I find it curious that Magdalene is kinda sequestered. Why? It's just a headstone, right?
Jen is now in a nasty position. She has found literally everything there is to find in Act 1 of Painscreek, except for that key in the drawer of Father Matthew's study. Since this game contains 0 hand-holding implements, Jen is now at the absolute mercy of Team EQ. This exact situation, a player missing something small, was talked about very often by Ferry and his team, and how such a problem will be remedied. Ultimately, they came to the conclusion that the only way for a player to get back on track without turning to the internet for help was to begin backtracking through every location they've already visited to see if they missed something in their initial search. This is a tremendous ask of the player, who is likely to have no fun at all in doing such a meticulous strip search of places they've already been to. It is just so tempting to search a walkthrough and save yourself the time. But Jen, saintly as she is, does exactly what Team EQ would ask of her. She retraces her steps, miraculously beginning with the church. And she doesn't have to hold her breath long before she finds that missing link.
Oh my word. It's probably the storage key. I return the tools back to the storage room. Give me tools!
Oh, watching this footage the first time, I was so sure we were about to get our first spoiler in Act 1. But Jen stuck with it. Ren has now broken into like 3 different cars on her way to the one in the town square, and has found literally nothing of importance in any of them. But now, she and Jen are virtually here together at the same time and ready to make that final advancement. For the first time since the sheriff's office, our investigators are all back in the same place, each having just led a nominally different investigation. Time to have our first breakthrough. What was left in this car?
Oh, there's shit here. '97. The investigation Somebody else was here before me investigating in '97?
Stephen Moss. Told you. Okay. That's not good. Oh my god. Dude, there's bloody handprints on the dashboard. Are you serious?
I came across your name through a close friend of mine. She highly recommended
So first off, 1997.
Cheers. Yeah. Saying you're a person of integrity and a very reliable investigator. So I'd like for you to investigate the case which happened in 1995 in a town called Painscreek on the murder of Vivian Roberts.
I've tried to forget everything, but I just can't. I simply want to know the truth. I've enclosed a copy of the threat letter that Vivian received the day she died. I hope it helps. For safety purposes, I would like to remain anonymous at this time.
Matthew seems to be Scott's legal parent. Still won't talk to him yet. I'll have to visit St. Patrick's Orphanage tomorrow. I know Scott found something there.
Scott found something at the orphanage? It's far away. What do you mean Scott found something?
Vivian married Charles in 1971. After the marriage, she became vice president of the Roberts Mining Company. It went into a slump after 73, but her resilience led her to rebuilding the company from the ground up. She supported local businesses. Maybe the cult ate him for getting too close to the truth. I hope I don't get eaten.
I know what you did. Meet me by the well at midnight. You know which one. Come alone. There's a well by their hunting cabin.
Also, the typewriter that typed this has a weird E on it.
It does.
She was taken to the Painscreek Community Hospital for an emergency operation in 74. Tricia Roberts was born just before that. Vivian was hospitalized for a few months. She was reliant on Dr. Henry Johnson during that period. Dope.
Dr. Henry Johnson. Oh!
Security room 025241. Yay!
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh my god, I thought that was a person up there. Well, there we have it. Vivian had done something. This was a motivated crime. We don't know what it was. It could be pertaining to the mining accident. It could be pertaining to the death of Dr. Roberts. But the one thing that connects these two individuals for certain is a well, and they both are familiar with it. Okay, here's the big question. Is the key in here? Who is this? Who is this?
The secret lies with her. Who the hell is that?
Probably Trisha.
Is that the... Who is that? That's not the daughter. The daughter has blonde hair.
Yeah, that's the ghost girl that I was calling Sophia. I'm not sure that that's Sophia. I don't know.
And break. You guys know something I find utterly fascinating about the mystery genre? It is the only genre that comes to mind which is intrinsically a game. All mysteries share the same common thread, and that is the author issuing a challenge to the reader. Can you answer this question before I answer it for you? Granted, in books, film, and TV, the reader, viewer, or otherwise engaged party has the luxury of just reading or watching to the end to get the answer of that question. But video games, or at least video games like the Painscreek Killings, have removed this passive option. As bizarre as it may sound, it's almost as if the mystery genre can find its best adaptations in the medium of video games, where that intrinsic game can be fully explored and utilized. Though we're only a third of the way through, I would say at a glance that EQ has done a fine job so far in intermingling genre and medium. So now let's have a look at that leaderboard and see how we're doing. First big question, who has solved the mystery? Luckily, no one. If a player was able to deduce the killer this early, I would be thoroughly surprised and disappointed in the design of this mystery. Even Bardic Jen, who has 100%ed Act 1, doesn't seem to have any strong feelings as to who the killer is. Though, I promise you, all of our detectives have been introduced to the killer. It is a name that they have heard plenty of times. As it stands right now, the only real accusation we've seen any of our detectives give was Ren suspecting Matthew Brooks of murdering Vivian, simply because he visited her daughter several times in the hospital after her death.
Which is kind of sus. I suspect him.
3 of our 4 detectives saw this clue, but Ren is the only one to vocalize overt suspicion towards the priest on behalf of it. Granted, I wouldn't expect a witch to have particularly warm feelings toward the church, although there is a historical precedent for the church having warm feelings toward witches. To summarize, it is a very bold author who writes a mystery that can be solved after reading the first act. And to be frank, the Painscreek killings is not that bold of a mystery. It's possible for a player to successfully deduce who the killer is right now, but there would have to be some guesswork involved. While the priest's visitations to Vivian's daughter could be the loose thread that unravels some greater secret, it is not nearly enough to convict. Then on to the next big question. Are players faring well without any hints, tips, or hand-holding? The answer is yes, with an asterisk. Unless character selector Jen have been holding out on me with their edits, all 4 of our detectives have now played around 3 hours of this mystery and have been highly engaged without the need for any kind of external help. Granted, this may change in Act 2, seeing as some investigators, Tyler, Dave, and myself, all failed to open Scott's safe, and Ren didn't even find the room it was in the first place. So, why the asterisk? That's because the truth is, all 4 of our detectives have been receiving hints. They just don't know it. How can I be so sure? Because on page 96 of The Making of the Painscreek Killings, the developers wrote a blurb titled, "Implementing in-game help to assist the players without them knowing." Scandalous, I know. The developers wanted to make sure that their realistic detective simulator was still solvable by the average Jerry and Jane who wanted to pick it up. So they capitulated in some small places and tried to place little pointers to help clarify parts of the investigation. The key here was making sure that these little pointers were well disguised, meaning that even though the player was receiving help ex machina, they could not be allowed to know. Otherwise, it could rob them of that pride and satisfaction the developers wanted to deliver. So just where were these hidden pointers? I'm sure you caught a few of them by watching the first act, but EQ Studios should be happy to know that none of our detectives ever realized they were being helped, just as planned. First, there is the quality of life improving inventory, which doesn't just record and organize all important documents for you, but also includes item descriptions, which will often contain overt clues as to what each item is for, especially when it comes to keys and tools. Second, and one that we were just introduced to right at the end, is the inclusion of the character Stephen Moss. If a player isn't on the right track before opening the car outside of Anne's Inn, they almost certainly will be after looking through it. That's because our own progression of the mystery will ultimately parallel Stephen's, and a player who is struggling to find leads will ultimately end up piggybacking off of his investigation. I don't have an issue with this approach of having another character who is a detective, but parts of it do feel a bit heavy-handed. I really feel like this old photo of the woman with the dark hair would be a lot freakier if it said nothing on the back. The secret lies with her isn't just cliché, but it's way too easy. And finally, the last major form of unseen assistance is so subtle that not even the developers realized it was a hint until after the game had launched. It's the Steam achievements. To applaud player progression, a little notification will periodically pop up in the bottom right corner of the screen when a player makes a milestone. These milestones include whenever all diaries of a character have been found and read, when major story events are uncovered, and, much later, when all keys and all tools have been found. To get an example of how these achievements can provide players with covert assistance, look no further than House 7 at Black Pine Road. Jen and I were the only 2 detectives to go there in Act 1, and neither one of us had any idea whose house we were in, not even after reading the diary upstairs, until we closed the book and got the notification, The Story of Andrew Reed. Even if a player missed this notification, the journal is still labeled in the player's inventory as Andrew Reed's journal. But more importantly, the inclusion of this achievement tells the player that we will no longer be reading anything that character wrote. Meaning, a particularly shrewd detective could interpret this notification as the game's way of saying, you have found all there is to know about this person, they have no more secrets. While I'm not confirming or denying this to be the case, it is certainly impacting some of the players' investigations. What's really telling here is that even though the Steam achievements were accidents, EQ Studios embraced them. Despite all the serious and hard-nosed posturing the Painscreek Killings does, the people who made this game really want you to solve it. So much so that they've gone out on a limb to make it a little easier wherever they can get away with it. In some instances, it may just be too easy.
I remember one of the not disagreements, but one of the things that me and Ferry debated on was that in the game there was a Slim Jim that you could use to open the car. I had no idea what a Slim Jim was. And, Ferry was telling me, doesn't everyone know what this is? And I'm like, maybe from your era, yeah. But from my era, I don't even know what that is. But we wanted to cover our bases in that sense. And I think there were small things here and there when it comes to hints and clues that we always debated. Is this too much? Is this too little? Like, oh I don't like that. There is always discussion and opinions in the designing room.
So is this how the instructional flyers in the game about how to break into cars came about?
Pretty much.
I see.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I feel like I would probably get arrested if I went around hanging up flyers saying, hey, this is a tool you can use to break into your car if you lock out the keys. On the next topic of deducing who the killer is, it is worth asking, just how much closer is the player to finding the killer at the end of Act 1? As it turns out, they've made a lot of progress. If the player were to leave Painscreek, as is optionally provided to them throughout the game, they are met with this screen. Who killed Vivian Roberts? There are 14 names here, and one of them is the killer. If you left Painscreek right at the start, there would be virtually no way of knowing who the killer could have been. But after Act 1, the player now knows that these 5 characters are dead. This is a lot of ruling out, and it's all done in one fell swoop. Visiting the cemetery. At the Painscreek Cemetery, players can find the headstones of Henry Johnson, Andrew Reed, Wanda Tyler, Trisha Roberts, and, most importantly, Scott Brooks. That's 5 names, and while only 2 of these people verifiably died before Vivian did, a player can still use the meta-understanding that for a mystery video game to contain a satisfying ending, there is likely going to be some kind of confrontation at the end. Hence, it is highly likely that none of these 5 are the culprit, on account of them being dead. This leaves 9 names, and a shrewd detective may do even more to whittle them down. One player might consider Oliver and Dorothy, who are both well into their 70s, to be exempt of suspicion. And another player might consider James Howard the sheriff and Father Matthew Brooks the priest to also be exempt, on account of their good-natured occupations. Then you could argue that the daughter would have been highly unlikely to kill her mother, and then note that Daniel and Laura Reed have held a remarkably minor role in this story. A totally unscrupulous player could then be left with just 3 names: the butler, the chauffeur, and the husband. Is the killer one of these 3? Or were we too hasty in crossing off suspects? Things only get murkier when you begin to question if everyone who we've been told is dead is really and truly dead. Speaking of the dead, we ought to talk about that figure in the woods. Only 2 of our 4 detectives have encountered this shadowy figure, and both of them saw different things. Only one of them is right though, and surprise surprise, it's Jen. Not only was she right that this figure is, in fact, a ghost, but she has also been remarkably spot on in identifying who the ghost is. Sophia is a character who, true to Stephen's writing, holds the secret to this mystery. Funny enough, she actually appeared another time to all 4 of our characters, only no one seemed to notice her. At the back of the Roberts mansion, there is a locked gate. Our detectives were only interested in trying the lock and not looking beyond it. Had they done so, they would have seen the figure of Sophia gazing back at them. Now there is an immediate and important conversation that we must have. I thought that this was a realistic detective simulator. So what the fuck is a ghost doing here? To be perfectly honest with you, I am not a big fan of the supernatural element here either. I'm a much bigger fan of mysteries that have practical and logical solutions instead of answering things with ghost logic. This is probably part of the reason why I assumed Sophia was a real person, specifically a man in the hoodie who was stalking me. Now, the inclusion of Sophia isn't all bad. For one thing, I can tell you right now that Sophia's inclusion in this game does not damage the mystery. Really, if you were to remove her from Painscreek Killings, it would do absolutely nothing to affect the process of solving the mystery. She exists purely for the purpose of scaring the player and adding flavor to the story. Barry tells me that she was largely the work of his co-writer, Yuri, who wanted to challenge the stereotype of ghosts in fiction always being angry and violent spirits.
She said that most of the people who think about horror or about ghosts or spirits or whatever, they tend to come from a very bad angle, which is they are there to hurt you. And she said, what if we are able to express it in a way where they just have unfinished business and they need help. Was that something like we did it on purpose to make it interesting or not. I think as an Asian and my co-writer is from Japan, it is quite common for us to hear about paranormal stuff, and I think that was the reason why we included that in the game.
The presence of Sophia's ghost is Yuri Matsuba's touch on this story. It's a bit of an odd choice for the mystery simulator to embrace the supernatural, but it's clearly inspired. So long as Sophia's ghost doesn't interfere with the investigation or any of the murders, which it doesn't, I am okay with her inclusion, though I can understand if you wouldn't be. The next topic I'd like to bring up is how exactly Team EQ made their puzzles. To begin with, Painscreek is a pretty puzzle-light game. When the developers do include puzzles, they wanted them to be realistic ones that could appear in real life, and the sort of ones that you solve in your head. To do this, Team EQ used an approach that they called 2 + 2 = 4. The idea is that to solve the puzzle, the player needs 4. To get 4, they first need 2 and 2. 2 and 2 are then separated and hidden, sometimes in obscurity, other times in plain sight. Only when the player finds 2 and 2 will 4 begin to make sense. Reading about this in their book, I was actually amazed at how simple and effective this method of designing puzzles was. Most main story puzzles are as simple as 2 + 2 = 4, while some of the side quests are deliberately made more difficult. These are sometimes referred to as 2 + 1 + 1 = 4, or broken down even further to create even harder puzzles. As a rule, the developers wanted the main story of Painscreek to be the easiest puzzles in the game. That way, if a player had been struggling, they would be more likely to make advances in the main quest as opposed to the side quests. The only problem with this approach is that, without a task list, the player has no way of knowing what is mandatory and what is superfluous. This sometimes manifests like how Jen and Ren spent 30 minutes trying to solve a darts puzzle, not just because they thought they could, but because they had no way of knowing if it was mandatory or optional. Poor Jen was completely out of leads at the time, and probably thought that the dart puzzle was the next step to advance the story. But 2 + 2 = 4 has an even greater application than puzzle design, and that is mystery design. It's as simple as clue plus clue equals bigger clue, and it works incredibly well throughout the main story of Painscreek. Not only does clue plus clue require more focus and attention to piece together, but it can also be more difficult and rewarding when breakthroughs are made. An example of a successful clue discovered this way can be seen in my playthrough, where I managed to piece together 3 little clues to make one big deduction. 1. A private investigator was previously in Painscreek. 2. An abandoned, locked car is outside the inn. 3. Records show that one Stephen Moss never checked out of the inn. Unfortunately, my eureka moment came off camera when I was editing my episodes, but these 3 things suddenly combined and made me realize the following. That car must belong to Stephen Moss, who was probably the private investigator. This little aha moment is exactly what EQ Studios wanted to create. Contrast this, though, with a clue that went right over my head: Andrew Reed's medical records. In Andrew's diary, I read the following excerpt aloud.
Did I see her again? How can that be? Why doesn't the medication work anymore? Did he give me cheap pills? No, that can't be. He's as guilty as I am. We're all in it together. He cannot abandon me. They cannot abandon me.
Maybe if I read it slower, I would have realized that whoever gave Andrew his medication is, quote, just as guilty as he is. Later, at the medical records room, I learned that Andrew's prescription was given to him by none other than Dr. Henry Johnson. 2 + 2 = 4, and thus the player can now infer that Henry Johnson and Andrew Reed are both sharing a terrible secret. One that relates to the woman Andrew keeps hallucinating, Sophia. I'm sure some of you detectives watching this video have a pretty good idea as to what that secret might entail. In Act 2, we will get to the bottom of Sophia's story. So for the final, and really most important question, so far the mystery is working, and the game is mostly working, but are they working together? Overwhelmingly, yes. At the end of Act 1, the level of content the player has experienced accurately reflects the progress they've made towards solving the mystery. The players who played the least know the least, and the one detective who saw all there was to know is the only one who was able to correctly identify the figure in this photo. Admittedly, Act 1 has not been all sunshine and roses though. Players will have to suspend their disbelief that a town can be left abandoned for 2 years and still have perfectly preserved buildings with functioning electricity, and that everyone in this town was just writing diaries which document exactly what the player needs to know. I can get behind the newspapers, correspondence, and other paper trails you find in the game, but the diaries are too convenient and too frequently utilized to exposit the story. In short, the game is telling when it should be showing, and this is a problem which will follow us into Acts 2 and 3. But on the whole, I am inclined to call Act 1 a success. It is apparent, at times obvious, that these are first-time developers who have taken on a very ambitious challenge for their first game, but the product so far is functioning as intended. In making this video, I find that I am reminded of deism, that weird clockmaker religion that many of the American founding fathers believed in. It was the idea that at the beginning of time, God made the universe like how a clockmaker makes an elaborate watch. Then he wound it up, stepped back, and just watched it go, no longer allowed to interfere with his creation. I don't mean to literally compare EQ Studios to God, but they are in a remarkably similar position. They spent 5 years crafting this clock, and now they've wound it up and put it on the Steam store, unable to further alter their creation. 1/3 of the way through its intended course, their clock seems to be ticking just nicely. No one has solved the mystery, and no one has needed a hint. But will this clock tick to the end without so much as a hiccup? A tremendous thank you to Ren, Jen, Tyler, and Dave for again allowing me to use your footage. I've left their channels on the description, and I highly encourage you to go give them some love. I'm not much of one to make deadlines, but I'd like to think that you can expect part 2 within 2 weeks of this video's release. In it, we will cover Act 2, a meteor chapter where more pretensions will be stripped away, puzzles will go from frustrating to infuriating, and someone will solve the mystery earlier than intended. EQ Studios, my hat is off to you. When I criticize your game, just know it's because I love it, and I only want future games sharing the genre to be even better. Until next time, be well, stay sleuthy, and vote for Holt.